This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Oh, welcome to episode 296 of the CineSnob Podcast. I am Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Cody, the NBA draft is upon us once again.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night?
Yes. Night one. It's a 2-night event now. So round one is tomorrow. Round two is on Thursday.
How stupid, but whatever. Does anybody care that much about this, the second round of the draft? I know
No.
it's I mean, the NFL, they make it 2 or 3 days right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
I've never.
There's also 8 rounds of NFL draft where, you need depth and you need all that stuff. Second round picks in the NBA are not guaranteed guys to even make a roster at that point.
Yeah, it's just you might find the diamond in the rough, the Manu Ginobili, whoever else was a
Tony
low
Parker.
pick in the draft. Yeah. I thought Tony Parker was the first round, but maybe I'm wrong. I thought he was last pick. I thought he was 29th pick.
Let me see. I thought he was second round, but maybe he's first pick or first round.
I think he was I believe he was number 20. Oh, he's 28 in the first round.
Okay, almost the last pick.
Yeah. I guess there was 28 teams then, right? Fuck if I know. What are there,
NBA
30
draft.
teams now?
He was the second to last pick, and he was the last pick because it was the 29th pick was forfeited. The Minnesota Timberwolves violated the salary cap and forfeited their first round pick.
Ooh. Can you even do that anymore? Can you violate the salary cap, or you just get taxed
I think you just pay a
to
tax,
fucking
yeah.
hell? Oh, the old days. We were talking about the NBA last night. I was mentioning it before we got on the air about the open mic I was at. I feel old talking about the NBA with young people now because they're like, "Oh, Steph Curry is he's a veteran." Shut up.
I mean,
he is, but
yeah. I mean, Steph Curry's 36.
yeah, but it's these old guys. I don't know. True, but when you've got JJ Redick becoming the coach of the LA Lakers, it's a weird time.
Did you see that there was this joke circulating? I'm sorry, you were going to tell a story, but
oh no, the story was it basically.
There was a story. So the one of the Golden State Warriors assistants, Kenny Atkinson, got hired to coach some team.
I believe it was the Cavs.
Yeah, and someone made this tweet that said this is an aggressive hire. He hardly has any podcast experience.
I was talking about this with a coworker, and he thinks there's no way LeBron isn't handpicking this JJ Redick, right?
Yeah, it's his podcast partner, and LeBron. There are certain players in the NBA who sort of are notorious for getting coaches fired, or if you look at Kevin Durant, where Monty Williams was gone, and then they fired a coach right after that. Who was it that just got fired from there? It was
is it Frank something?
Frank Vogel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he got famously when Steve Nash got hired in Brooklyn, they fired someone, and that apparently was a Durant move. That was the last thing they did before he got traded.
Speaking of Monty Williams, I think he's getting $65 million guaranteed after getting fired by the Pistons too.
Oh yeah.
So that dude's banking $80 million to sit at home from two different teams.
I kind of wonder if the Spurs will bring him in as an assistant just to.
Wasn't he an assistant before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fuck it. Why, if you're making that kind of money, why don't you just go hang out?
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, the draft. I don't have any kind of insight this year. It's not a blockbuster draft as last year's was.
No, it's not a blockbuster draft, but the Spurs have 2 picks in the top 10, so it's worth watching for that reason. 2 picks in the top 8, in fact.
Do they trade any of them? Do they?
Could be something where they trade up or down. Presumably, not to get too in the weeds on basketball talk, but presumably this is a draft where they want to try to find a point guard for Wemby, which was the huge criticism last year, is that he didn't really have a point guard. And there's 3 French players who are also projected to go in the first 10 to 12. So seeing if they land a Frenchie for Wemby there. But yeah, I'll be attending a draft party at our old pal Kiko's house.
Oh, he's having a draft party. Wow.
Yeah, he did last year. It was a little anticlimactic, but it was more of a a sort of like a victory cigar party.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I remember I saw a clip a couple days ago. I think it was the Austin Spurs posted it from an Austin draft watch party.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Spurs select Victor Wembanyama. I'm like, yay! Like, I mean, everybody knew that was happening.
Yeah,
it's again anticlimactic. Like, I would have loved to see the video that went viral of, I don't remember the bar in San Antonio where
it was the Rue Pub.
The Rue Pub where the place went ape shit
on the lottery night.
Yeah, that's the real excitement. I do recall the thing that I thought was funny, because I hadn't paid attention to the draft in years, that there's like this big wink, like, we're not going to tell you, you can't say who you're going to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after Wemby's officially drafted, the jerseys are on sale, like at the arena.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are we even doing this? Why do we make this rule?
I don't know how closely you follow the draft this year, but like if you're following on Twitter, basically like Woj and Shams are tweeting the picks out like 30 seconds to a minute, if not longer, before the pick is made. So there's like no drama in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Woj had to start like not saying they're going to pick them, so he finds like unique ways to say it. So it's like, the San Antonio Spurs are intriguingly curious about drafting Victor Wembanyama number 1, and that's how it ends up panning out.
Yeah, I mean it's such a weird game to play, because I remember we may have talked about this before, but I remember when the Spurs landed the pick for Duncan. I remember Pop giving an interview, like a satellite TV interview, and like there's already a Duncan jersey behind him. Anyway, hopefully it improves the team some. I'd forgotten how much I missed watching basketball, coming back to it this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the playoffs hit, I was like, oh man, I wish I had something intriguing to watch. Like, because I don't give a shit without the Spurs in there.
I don't think it'll be long before there will be Spurs playoff basketball.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, my coworker, he went to he took his son to one of the Mavs games. I guess game 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, they have no, like, if his son like just loves the NBA,
mm-hmm.
which is a weird thing for me because I never got that, like just loving that. But he's like, oh, you want to go see a Mavs win? I'm like, no, I don't fucking care. I'm glad they fucking lost. Like an in division, a division rival, a conference rival in the division. Fuck it, I'm not going there.
Yeah, no, I straight up rooted for the Celtics. In the
I mean, I don't give a shit about the Celtics either, but
I don't either. But
the Mavs, fuck it, no. Like a division rival, nope, not gonna do it. Yeah. All right, anything else before we move on?
No, we're good.
All right, let's go ahead and start with reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
Next up, we have the Bikeriders.
Benjamin Cross of Elmwood Park was arrested and charged with 18 traffic violations, but not before reportedly running through 7 stoplights, hitting speeds over 85 miles an hour in 2 20-mile-an-hour school zones, and causing damage to 4 municipal vehicles as a result of the pursuit. Cross is free on the $2,500 bond and will stand trial in Park Ridge Traffic Court on December 9th.
How many stoplights did you win?
They said 7, so
what?
So I guess that's the number. It felt like more.
This is a film from what's the director's name? Jeff Nichols.
Jeff Nichols.
This stuff like Midnight Special, Mud. This movie, Take Shelter. This movie got bounced around a little bit, I think, before being released.
Yeah.
I know it got taken off the calendar and put back on at one point.
It was it was originally supposed to come out in December of last year.
Yeah. As you can see, stars Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, just a bunch of like grisly character actors. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Cody, tell us about the Bikeriders and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so the Bikeriders is based on a book, which is sort of like the construct of the movie of how it's set up is basically the author that ended up writing the book is like conducting interviews, asking these people. Specifically, it's kind of framed around Jodie Comer and her character, about the motorcycle club they were part of, and it's based on like a fictional club called the Vandals, which is a fictional version of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, which is what the book was originally written about. And it sort of chronicles the foundation of the motorcycle club and sort of like some stories that happen throughout. And it's kind of like more of a character study, I would say, than having any kind of real narrative constructed around it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how this movie, like, it didn't work for me in a few different ways.
Yeah, I you and I normally chat about these beforehand, but
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you the same thing because I feel the same way.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of touch on it, and maybe you'll agree with certain parts of it. But I think we'll start with the idea that the overarching thing I can think of to say about this is, like, I don't know why any of this is important. I don't think the movie does a great job of making any of it feel important or significant. And I was having trouble wondering, like, why I should care about these people and this story. In particular, the movie kind of centers around this main character played by Jodie Comer, who I think is really good in the part. She's doing a very over-accentuated accent, but
It's a very Chicago 1960s ladies from Chicago, like
yeah. And apparently that's how the real woman talked, like, exactly, which...
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very region-specific, era-specific dialect.
Yeah, and it's a good performance, I think, and it's about her talking about not only the foundation, which was formed by the character played by Tom Hardy, but her relationship with the character played by Austin Butler, who was kind of like a somewhat troubled person who she was kind of trying to... There's a little bit of a tug-of-war that she was having between, like, him and the club and her, and trying to balance all of that out. And so it's kind of framed in that way. And again, there's just, like, small pieces of this that I feel like don't exactly work for me. So one of it is just, like, not knowing a lot of like why I should care about any of this. The performances, like I said, I think Comer is good, and I think she's kind of like the only good person in the movie, in my opinion.
Performance-wise?
Yeah, because for me, Tom Hardy, I think I'm just getting a little tired of this sort of, like, why does he have to have a stupid accent in every movie?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very like, he's not the only one, because there's like three different, like, super character actors in here that are, like, just playing it to the roof.
Yeah. It's very, like, these are very big performances, and I think that Tom Hardy is doing, like, some version of his Al Capone that he did in that terrible.
What the fuck was that movie called?
I think it was just called Capone, right?
Oh no, it was like Fredo or something, right?
I think it was just called Capone.
Well, hold on, I'm gonna look this up. Go ahead and keep talking.
Yeah. But he's doing, like, this over accentuated Chicago accent and an affection and air affectation, and
you're right, it was Capone, sorry.
Yeah.
He was they called him Fredo, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. And then I think, like, Austin Butler is basically just, like, brooding the entire movie. Like, he's not even, like, a character as much as he is, like, a presence in it, where he's just, like, quietly, like, smoldering and smoking a cigarette, and that's, like, for me, like, the bulk of what he's doing in the movie, and I don't think he has anything interested to do. I think somewhat still in his Elvis accent as part of it, but so the performances for me are just, like, too big and too they're just too broad to work for me. And then there's, like, the element of the story, which is, like, I didn't think that anything was compelling enough to, like, really draw you in. Like, I don't think that I think that Austin Butler is not a round enough character for you to care about the relationship between him and Jodie Comer. And I think that there's, like, this notion that happens throughout that, like, Tom Hardy is kind of losing control over the group. And for me, the interesting thing is, like, they talk about this element of, like, eventually it became an actual gang. And I'm sitting there going, like, well, how, like, what is the difference between the motorcycle club and the gang? Because they're doing, like, borderline, if not direct criminal activity as the club. I mean, they burned down a bar.
Yeah.
And like, they're not, like, super. Mm-hmm.
I do feel like that's part of the the conflict there.
Right.
I mean, I get it. I get what you're saying. Like they're saying they're not criminals. It's a club, but like that's the thing where it's like, where does the line? Like, at what point is the line blurred?
Sure. Well, and I think that there's some element of, and I think what the movie is trying to go for, but doesn't hit with me, is like there's some element of this framework surrounding Jodie Comer, her character, and her dialogue that is meant to sort of like crack the facade of the sort of like, I'll just say like toxic masculinity of the club, and like how stupid some of the ritualistic stuff is, and like how ridiculous and over the top like the aggro kind of attitude towards things are, and the commitment towards it, and then maybe even to some degree, you know, the sort of distinction between a club and a criminal group or a gang. But I don't think it ever commits to that idea that she is serving as like the voice of that and the conflict of that. And so I don't think it ever really hits or sticks or connects. And it just kind of feels like a series of vignettes about the life and times of this motorcycle club that's kind of populated with like small roles and small stories and people moving in and out. I think the most successful is like, I think Michael Shannon is pretty fun and funny in this part. A frequent collaborator with Jeff Nichols.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, I think that it's like at times pretty dull, and I think made worse by the fact that like I was never fully invested in the story. And I don't know if that's a me problem or the movie problem, but I don't think the movie does a great job of selling the stakes or the interest level or the relationships or anything like that. It's not bad per se, but it just doesn't work for me.
You know, I would say really there's not a story.
Right.
Like, so this is based on a book, but most notably it's a photo book. Like, it's a photo essay. So there's no narrative to the book, and it's framed as this, it's sort of framed as this interview piece. Is it Mike Faced, who's
yes,
like the journalist? So you see, like, you're dropping in every couple years in this timeline to he's talking to Jodie Comer's character, and you kind of get the updates on that. But there's no, like, you don't understand why any of this is happening, and you don't get any insight into the characters themselves at all, other than Jodie Comer. Am I saying that right? Comer? What am I saying? Comer. Other than her character, like, Austin Butler is, like you said, he's just brooding. Mm-hmm. Tom Hardy is just this gruff, like, kind of boss that's losing his grip. Michael Shannon's a fucking weirdo. Boyd Holbrook is kind of
I did like Boyd Holbrook.
I do like Boyd Holbrook a lot too. He's just
Norman Reedus.
Norman Reedus comes in and plays just a fucking balls to the walls weirdo. Like, it's full of these moments, and it's very like old school biker movie feel. Like, there's an Easy Rider reference, and I think, is it Norman Reedus' character who's paid to like rev his motorcycle outside of Easy Rider screenings? Yeah. That's a funny touch. Yeah. But it also feels like it's aspiring to be this crime drama.
Yeah.
That doesn't there's nothing to grab onto. There's like, you're never made aware of the stakes. Like, Austin Butler fucks off for like half the movie. And he, like, there's no real like explanation as to why or who he is, and there's an undercurrent of this, like you said, this Tom Hardy's losing control of this group, where these younger people come in, like these hippies and burnouts or whatever. I just don't know that was ever really successfully communicated as to what was happening. I don't know what, like, a better version of this is like this focus on Tom Hardy as this kind of aging gang leader, and Austin Butler as his would-be like successor, and like the conflicts they've had with, becoming a gang versus just being a club. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what I feel like the movie has playing out under the surface, but it just never connects. It's all telling and no showing. Mm-hmm. And like literally telling, like, it's literally Jodie Comer narrating half of this movie. I wish it were better, because I like the atmosphere. I like some of the performances. I wasn't as irritated with Tom Hardy or Austin Butler as you might have been, but
Yeah.
I do think. I mean, I don't know. It's a weird little movie. I don't know what the point of it was. I mean, I don't know why it's structured like this, just sort of peeking through a window at what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like it's more designed to be like a TV show where it's like you get like the weekly chronicles of this like motorcycle group and like, or like the telling of it, but like none of it has any kind of like interest or substance to it.
Yeah.
And even like the goings on of what's happening, like again, there's just like no, I don't think it does any legwork to make you invested in any of it, aside from just like hearing other people talk about it. And like that's the whole thing, is like you're hearing other people talk about what happened, and then you're supposed to be invested because you're hearing someone tell a story. I don't know.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the TV thing, like this is, this formula was something like The Sopranos was, where it just sort of like there was a connective tissue, but every episode you were getting something different.
Mm-hmm.
You were getting, it wasn't highly serialized. It wasn't, it wasn't a sitcom either. So where it just things reset to zero afterwards, but it was sort of a slice of life. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're getting here. But I don't think it works as a movie at all, because it doesn't, you're not filling in any blanks here. Like, I still don't know what the fuck is up with Austin Butler. I still don't know what the fuck is up with Tom Hardy. The people that get the most like most backstory sketched out are like minor characters, like the one who becomes a cop and whoever Norman Reedus was playing. Like it was a disappointment, I should say. What's your grade for the Bikeriders, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, I still think I'll give it a C+, because I don't think that it's poorly made. I think Jeff Nichols is a competent and good director. But, again, for me, there's nothing to really care about here. And, to have a character study that doesn't really have a lot of interest in telling you much about the characters. Like, again, Tom Hardy and Austin Butler's characters are almost like purposefully distant as part of this. And I don't think that helps with the movie that kind of relies upon you. Without a narrative, you have to worry or can be concerned or care about the characters, and I don't think it does a good job of establishing that.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree, a C+. I just wish there were more connective tissue here, other than Jodie Comer narrating, like, and then time jumping, 3 years at a time, and it just, I wanted to, I like the vibe, I like the atmosphere that it presented, I like some of the character actors just going, again, fucking balls to the walls weird. But ultimately, it was disappointing to me. All right, let's move on to our last movie, Ghostlight.
Come on.
What's this?
Your salvation. I'm kidding. We're rehearsing a play. Everyone, this is...
Dan.
Dan is the new Aaron. Everyone is replaceable.
Here's a space to your heart. Come on.
No,
Oh, come on.
I'm not an actor.
Can you read?
Did he audition?
Do you have a monologue we can see?
Something classic?
I should...
What? Where do you have to be? Sit down and play pretend for an hour, and then you can go back to your life.
This is a drama that premiered at Sundance. Did you see it at Sundance, Cody?
No, I saw it at South by Southwest.
Okay. So premiered at Sundance in January. You saw it in South by Southwest. Tell us about Ghostlight and what you thought of it.
Sure. So Ghostlight is a movie about essentially a family who is sort of like facing a tragedy. They're in the wake of a tragedy, and it's a mother, a father, and a daughter who are in real life a family. So the three actors, the main actors of this movie, are all like mother, father, daughter.
I didn't. I knew that was his real life daughter. I didn't realize that was his real life wife.
Yes, yeah, and basically after an incident where the main character of the movie, who is the father, Dan, played by Keith Kupfer, has an incident and sort of stumbles his way into like a community theater rehearsal, as you see in that clip of Romeo and Juliet, and in order to sort of like escape from what he's experiencing and going through, he joins the play with no experience, and over time slowly starts to realize that the play is kind of mirroring some of his experiences, and kind of has to confront some things he's been avoiding through that process. So like you said, or like I said, I saw this at South by Southwest in March, and it ended up being my favorite thing I saw at the festival in March. And I was really, struck with a movie like this, which is about as small scale as a movie gets when you start thinking about it, where it's very dialogue driven, it's very small and indie. And the actors in it are like mostly theater actors. So like Keith Kupfer and his wife are both theater actors. The daughter was in, I don't know if you remember watching
She's in the
Are You There, God?
Yeah.
Margaret. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see it, but I know she's in it.
Oh, okay. It's really, you should watch that movie. But
I've heard it's great.
Yeah. But she's in that. She has a pretty big role in that movie, and she's in this one. And yeah, so like there's a lot of like themes going on here of grief. So basically what you find out early on in the movie, this is not really a spoiler, is that they have undergone a loss in the fact that their son, and then the kid's brother has died tragically in some way. And everyone's kind of grappling with it in different ways. The daughter's kind of acting out in school. The mother has kind of like more traditional grief, and then the father is sort of like bottling everything in, not talking about anything, and then occasionally like exploding in big moments of frustration, anger, grief, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so you find him in this place where he's sort of like again, just looking to escape from everything that's going on, and he finds himself just sort of like wrapped up in the community of it, in the act of like pretending to be someone else and all of that. And I just think this movie is just kind of like effortlessly charming in the way that it kind of not only confronts major and heavy topics, but does so in a way that feels really grounded for me. I think that Keith Kupfer, the main character in this movie, is like one of the best performances I've seen so far this year, where he kind of teeters the line of kind of like being really subdued and quiet to exploding very very well. And I think one thing that's really hard there, I assume is really hard to do, is to be like a good actor pretending to be a bad actor. And I think there's a lot of like really bad Shakespeare, like intentionally bad Shakespeare as part of this, that I found again charming. And then I think in like towards the second and third act, when you start to see things happen, and when the mirroring of the play in his life starts to kind of come into focus, I think the movie gets like really poignant and kind of really confronts grief in a way that feels authentic and real. And to see like this notion that as it starts to mirror his life a little bit more, he begins to like understand a little bit more about his son and kind of like the circumstances of what happened, and kind of makes a little bit of headway and progress through that. And it is a scrappy independent film, so there's pieces of it I think technically that could be a little bit better. It maybe could have used a little bit of editing along the way. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of what the movie, like, I think a lot of people's reactions, and maybe this is just me projecting, but I think a lot of people's reactions might depend on how on the nose the movie is, and if that bothers them or not. Where when you start seeing like the play that they're doing, Romeo and Juliet, and sort of like as the real life thing unfolds, your reaction it's very on the nose, and it may depend on how you feel about that. For me, as I've seen it twice, I kind of get it, because I think it kind of has to be that way in order for the character to go on the journey that he ends up going on. And so the on the nose piece doesn't really bother me all that much, because I think it delivers its message well. And I think, like I said, it kind of has to be that way in order for it to happen. But I could very easily see someone going, okay, this is too on the nose and obvious. They could have chosen a different play. They could have chosen a different like cause of death and as part of it. But for me, it really works. And so like, while I don't think that it's like, Oscar worthy or an Oscar contender. It is one of the better movies I've seen this year. And I just I think it's like funny. I think it's sweet. I think it's touching. I think that it's sort of commentary on grief and like the healing power of art and especially the lead performance, I think really pushes it over the line for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice, sweet little movie. I was going to bring up the kind of on the nose factor of it, because like once you put like the two and two together, which is easy, you're like, okay, I get it. I know exactly what's happening here. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. It does feel like sort of an indie comfort movie or comfort food sort of movie. I do really like the performances. I think Keith Cuffer is really good. It's hard to do. I mean, looking at his roles, he's a character actor, like we mentioned earlier. It's hard to get that good kind of everyman performance, I think, because you gotta go with somebody who's not a star, and I think that obviously this pulls it off, because otherwise it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that like this guy looks like any guy you'd see anywhere, Yeah,
you buy him as a construction worker in the early part of the movie.
Right. I mean, he's just sort of, drab and dumpy and, just a normal looking middle-aged man. I think that my one complaint that doesn't have to do with the play is that I think it starts a little broad, especially the character of Rita. I think is played really broad at first, like almost comedically broad, and when the version that became like the main version of the character showed up, it felt disconnected for me. Like, was it? I feel like you mentioned it, but she has a line that's like, "What are you laughing at, dipshit?" or something like that. What the fuck are you laughing at, dipshit? And it's a great line read, but it totally doesn't fit with the rest of the character the way that doesn't fit with the way the character is played for the rest of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think that character kind of comes alive a little bit more when you find out a little bit more about her experience as an actor, but also two, when the play of Romeo and Juliet kind of settles into what it was versus what it is, which is like her paired up with like a younger actor.
Yeah.
And then finally like, and you get her dialogue about like always wanted to play Juliet and like all that. I think it really rounds out the character well in general, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I don't think it's a bad thing. Because this is one of the few movies I've gone totally cold.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to expect. And when that character shows up, I feel like, okay, we're going to get some broad character work here. And that it kind of settles into this really low key thing. Was I don't want to say jarring, but it was kind of a bit of a left turn from that initial sure. outing. I don't think it's bad, and I don't think it does anything to diminish the movie. I just think it's a simple movie. I don't think there's anything flashy about it. I do kind of wish you got a little bit more of, I guess, let's say the real life Juliet in the film, like kind of her
sure.
point of view.
Yeah.
I guess it's intentionally kept at a distance because of a litigation, but I don't quite feel like that character, like the actions of that character don't match with the portrayal of that character.
Can I ask you something? Because I was wondering if you were going to bring this up, and the other thing that sort of bothered me about it is that even for like a dumpy everyman, sort of like construction worker, not in touch with his feelings guy, he didn't know the plot to Romeo and Juliet.
yeah.
It was like, or asked it as like, hey, have you ever heard of this play, Romeo and Juliet? I thought that was like maybe like a stretch too far.
Yeah, like you went to high school, right?
Right, exactly.
Maybe you forgot. Like maybe like the idea that it would like hit you all of a sudden, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Because like that immediately does. I mean, I know it's tragic lovers, star-crossed lovers, a tragedy, and the idea that like he didn't remember that until a certain point would have been, I think, a little more realistic than the idea that, because this motherfucker would have been watching. He would have taken his wife on a date to see the DiCaprio Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. Motherfucker, that thing's close to 30 years old. Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I do feel like it's got that indie movie feel where like you're just like you pick the lane and you're gonna stay in that lane no matter if it makes sense or not.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fault it for that.
Me neither.
Anyway, what's your grade for Ghostlight, Cody?
It's a B+ for me. Like I said, it's one of the better movies I've seen this year. I think it's like a really tender story about grief and loss and coping with it, and like not only the meaning of like escape, but the idea that through his escape he starts to understand his son who died a little bit more. And I think those moments are really powerful and subtle, right? This could have been a big, huge realization or revelation. It's done subtly. The idea that, you know, he finally starts showing emotion when, you know, there's a scene in there where he wants to change the ending of Romeo and Juliet, and he gets pissed off because he doesn't get it. And I think, again, those are like the really powerful moments where I'm like, okay, this is the kind of stuff I love, which is like small indie stuff that's telling powerful stories, where it's like mostly low key moments of like, you know, a little bit of fireworks and then settles back into low key. And I love that. So B+ for me.
Yeah, a B for me. I think it's it's a really good movie. Like I said, I have a few indie movie qualms with it, but you know, I think it's really well done, and I think it's a nice low key thing to experience. And you know, it deals with a touchy subject, and I think it handles it really well. You know, I don't think it overly dramatizes it, or you know, anything that it doesn't exploit it, doesn't do anything to cheapen it or you know, kind of lecture about it or anything. So
yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for this week. Next week, I know we have A Quiet Place Day 1.
Yeah, so the big releases next week are A Quiet Place Day 1, and then we've got a couple of long boys coming up. We have Kinds of Kindness, the Yorgos Lanthimos movie with Emma Stone. We also have Horizon, an American Saga Chapter 1, the 3-hour Kevin Costner Western that he sort of bankrupted himself for. And then there's an indie movie, an A24 indie movie called Janet Planet that also opens, that hopefully they are in the process of sending me because I asked for it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm leery of Kinds of Kindness. I've heard it's very divisive.
We'll see. We'll see what you end up doing, because I feel like A Quiet Place. Are you on board for A Quiet Place?
I'm on board for A Quiet Place Day 1 because I do enjoy the first two.
Yeah, me too.
This Yorgos one is not my.
If you flipped a coin and you were like 2-hour 45-minute Yorgos movie or 3-hour Kevin Costner Part 1 of 4 Western, what do you choose?
I would choose the Yorgos one.
Okay.
Just because I'm not. You know, I don't think, I don't know. It's hard to get invested into the Westerns for me. It's just never been my genre.
I get it.
I mean, I could see a weirdo Yorgos movie pretty easily, but I mean, this one looks, I've heard it's extra weird, which
I wouldn't expect anything less. That gets back to its roots, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. But 2 hours and 45 minutes, that's a lot of extra weird to be doling out.
But a great cast.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love the entire cast, but
yeah,
it's like an anthology. It's a lot of weirdness there. Yeah. If you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter @cinesnob, Facebook cinesnobnet, youtube.com/cinesnob. Anything else, Cody, before we go?
No. Oh, we didn't cover it, but the Ghost Right Here, Right Now finished top 10 in the box office this week.
Did you go see it?
The last showing. I saw it twice in the theater.
It's a concert movie?
Yeah. So it's like a concert film, but it has like short
skits. Does it have skits?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, Jesus
Christ.
But
it's the lore of the band, and it's pushing the lore of the band forward.
Oh, good.
It's a narrative.
Are they bad actors?
Well, really, it's just one guy, and he's fine.
Okay. I've never listened to Ghost. Isn't it sort of poppy?
It's very poppy, yeah.
Why is it so dark then?
It's theatrical. It's contrast. It's the idea that like you have the juxtaposition of this like super
all right, we gotta go
dark, evil looking satanic group.
Wasn't he like a pope? Music. He's
yeah,
up like
he's a satanic pope. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, some might say the real pope is satanic, right, Cody? All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafania.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.